Dear viewer, today I've got climate change on my mind. I'd like to take a moment to look at the climate change debate, but not from the usual perspective of trying to prove or disprove it. I'd like to actually assume the position that climate change isn't happening, that it is just all a misinterpretation of the science. And then I'd like to examine that from the perspective of what it's used to defend, and whether that makes sense. So, starting from that premise, stating climate change is not happening, what that is primarily used to defend is the status quo on energy consumption. That is used to defend continued reliance on fossil fuel and on natural gas. I'd like to submit that it's irrelevant whether climate change is happening or not, that these technologies are old, outdated, and obsolete. Even assuming that we are not bringing upon the end of the planet, there are massive issues with natural gas and fossil fuels and burning coal that should just make them a technology we don't want to run anymore. So let's go through those. First, of course, even putting aside whether or not they are creating any more heat around the world, whether or not they are bringing about more storms or not, things we do know for certain are that they do generate a great deal of air pollution. That air pollution is directly linked to respiratory, cardiovascular disease, respiratory issues, cardiovascular disease, cancers, and other adverse health effects for any of those living or frequenting within a mile of either a power plant or a fracking site. Now, this is due to the release of particulates and ozone, among other things, into the air in that area. This can be measured. It has been measured. It is consistent. There is not a way to clean that. We can't burn these fuels without releasing those carcinogens and such into the air. So, we are contaminating the area within a mile of either a power plant site or a fuel acquisition site. It's not just the air. We're also contaminating groundwater. We are pushing in methane and volatile organic compounds, which not only make it unsafe for consumption, but also potentially create pockets that are flammable, that become explosion risks. This has been observed in several sites and has actually led to fires in Ohio and Pennsylvania, among others. So that is just another way that we are polluting not only our bodies in this water and air pollution, but we're also poisoning the wildlife, which has been noted to start either changing or dying off around these power generation or fuel acquisition sites. Where it really, really takes off is in fracking. This is where human waste becomes just absolutely incredible. I was unaware of this until I started researching it a bit. But not only are we messing up groundwater and the air, we are also burning through enormous amounts of water, usable water, to extract oil, to extract fuel in this fracking process, this hydraulic fracturing process. A single well, to get it started, requires the use of between 3 and 12 million gallons of water. That water is after that considered unrecoverable. Unrecoverable. That's an incredible thing, especially in the face of droughts and such, especially in the face of some regions finding populations incapable of getting fresh drinking water. In 2011, the United States alone spent 70 to 140 billion gallons of water in this hydraulic fracturing industry. All of that water for that year alone became what is considered unrecoverable water. It is either burned up in the process or is so contaminated so as to be unusable, unfilterable, cannot be recouped into a water filtration process. Again, we have droughts. We have populations that don't have access to fresh drinking water. We are spending over 100 billion gallons per year extracting fuels, which we don't need if we change our power consumption. If those matters aren't enough, it also has been linked through study to creating higher risk for, or in some cases triggering, low to medium magnitude earthquakes and seismic activity. This is especially true when we are disposing of fracking wastewater. Apparently it lubricates the tectonic plates a bit and gets them moving, or it displaces them because we're just pumping millions of gallons of water, ruined water, into these cracks in the earth which we're making. Of course, it's going to create some seismic activity. Now that we don't know what the long-term effects are of that, but to me that doesn't sound good. So, on its face, climate science denial is being used to defend these power sites, which basically convert our natural resource of fresh drinking water directly into a compound that we then burn to poison our bodies and to poison the environment. Yeah, we get some electricity out of it, but there are so many other ways that we can get electricity, which don't require wasting and destroying water so that we can then waste and destroy large regions of our environment. To me, it makes sense to look at those alternatives. To me, it makes sense to stop subsidizing this industry. And to me, it makes sense to phase it out and stop relying on technology that just is out of date. I mean, it came about, in 1800s? We can do better. We have done better. There's too much money caught up in it, is what it boils down to. So even if someone is in the camp that climate change isn't real, they really should think about, what about all the other effects? Sure, concede the point. Climate change isn't real. It still is an indefensible technology. There's no reason to continue with it. It's terrible. Anyway, that's where my mind is tonight. Talk to y'all later.